Good evening, everyone. You're listening to Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this is your Red Pill News for Saturday Night Livestream. Tonight, joining us in the studio from the new California state, hopefully soon to be the 51st state of our beautiful union, Paul Preston and Greg Hanna. You guys may have heard of interested parties seeking to secede from the state of California due to the issues that they're facing. Well, surprisingly, the issues are being caused by a relatively small portion of the state. It looks like the majority of the state actually does want to become its own state, the 51st state, the new California state. We're going to be talking all about that tonight. I want to thank Greg and Paul for being here, and we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsor. Hey guys, I spoke with My Patriot Supply the other day, and we were talking about how people prepared from like 2010 to 2016 versus how they're preparing now. And they said they noticed it seemed like a lot of people just stopped preparing when the last occupant of the White House left, as if everything that was being prepared for was just having to do with either him or HRC. But if you do think that, then you're wrong. It's so much more than that. Just imagine the deep state. Imagine what they're willing to do to get their power back. You know, destroying the Constitution, subverting due process, destroying people who are innocent and who've done nothing wrong. Just imagine what's going to happen if they come back into power. Now, I'm not saying I think that's likely. I don't think it is. But personally, I'd rather not be caught off guard. We prepare because the threats we face are bigger than any one single thing. And because of that fact, I've partnered again with My Patriot Supply, and I think that you guys should too. So right now, you can save $70 on a 2-week food kit, and you'll get guaranteed 2-day delivery. And it's at preparewithredpill78.com. Now, the offer won't last, but the good news is that My Patriot Supply will. And don't think you can't afford to not prepare, because they have a lot of different payment options and plans to fit any budget, so you don't have to wait. Get ahead of the chaos today and go to preparewithredpill78.com. That's preparewithredpill78.com. And remember, when you support My Patriot Supply, you support this channel. All right, without further ado, please welcome to the program, Paul Preston and Greg Hanna. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Very good. Thank you very much.
Excellent. How about you, Greg?
Great.
Doing well, man.
All right. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you, both of you, for coming here tonight. It was only very recently that I heard about the concept of this this movement that you guys are working towards and behind. Paul, I believe you've been involved for the longest. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and how you came to be involved with this movement to secede from California?
Well, you know, I started out as a public school educator, and I was in education for 41 years, and I really saw the disintegration of the public schools over that 41-year period. And then I discovered the corruption that was going on in the public school system that was pretty replete and pretty all over the place. And we're seeing that whole thing manifest itself right now in California. But I decided that there had to be some way in which we could stop really what I thought was going to be a totalitarian takeover of California and ultimately the United States. It was pretty obvious that there were a lot of things behind the scenes. Now, this is in the late 80s, early 90s, and into the 2000s. And I think a lot of people in the public education and all throughout California sensed there were enormous changes going on, heavy taxation starting, and the overabundance of businesses leaving California, the collapse of the middle class. And when we started to look at all that, and later on when I retired out of education, I didn't retire. I've never really retired, but it was pretty obvious that we had to do something to solve the problem in California and return ourselves to a Republican form of government, which is, of course, what we've lost. We've lost that Republican form of government really since the 90s. And this is the result of really having a failed government system that we're all seeing today. And, of course, this is just only going to get worse unless we correct it, and there is a constitutional way to correct it. The founding fathers left that out to us, that we would be able to have a formula by which we could work to correct itself. It would, anytime a dictator or something like that would start to form. And the constitutional process was found in Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution. So that is where we all started. I started with this, really the concept and the ideas that maybe the only way out of this is to form a new state, because I recognize that California's constitution was ruined, and there's no point, it's well past the point of any kind of return. It has been refashioned. It's been amended almost over 600 times.
Wow.
And, you know, the U.S. Constitution's only been amended 27 times since 1789. So, you know, you take a look at that and you think, my gosh, what could possibly go wrong? Well, it gets worse. And it was kept on getting worse. And, of course, now we see it for what it really is. It's a monoparty system that is nothing more than a democracy and a dictatorship. And the key thing is that the Founding Fathers never wanted to have a democracy. The word democracy is not used in any of the founding documents. You don't find it in the Declaration of Independence, or you don't find it in the Constitution, nor the Bill of Rights. They wanted us to make sure we were not going to have a democracy. So the Republican form of government is what they wanted. That's what they cherished. And that's why it's a guarantee in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution to all of us. We are all guaranteed. The federal government guarantees this. The President of the United States must follow his oath and guarantee this to us, a Republican form of government, keeping us free from invasion and keeping us free from domestic violence. And right now, I don't think we have a Republican representative form of government. We certainly are being invaded, and we do have a lot of domestic violence. So that's what we have going on right now. And so we've stepped up, and really our process started, for me anyway, the journey, just kind of poking around. How do you form a state? What do you do with a state? Then I heard of the Jefferson movement. I jumped on with that one for a couple of years and realized they were going down the wrong path. They were not following being true to Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution. They chose a court or a judicial method to try and form a new state, which is impossible to do. It's unconstitutional. So we stuck to it, and we formed our own group back in 2016 that we started with a big rally at church, and then it moved on to a lesser thing. And then finally the Jefferson folks didn't want to go any of that route. So then we took basically took 4 or 5 counties and started from there, started chartering counties, bringing them into our system of New California. And we ended up with 47 counties in California out of the 58 counties, whole or part. And then we have some that are what we call provisionals, and they are not totally into the system yet, but that's 5 more. So it's a total of 52 counties that are engaged with New California right now.
Wow.
And that's a lot of people. We've been doing a lot of traveling, a lot of speaking about what goes on with the New California state movement. It's recognized as really the constitutional movement that is moving forward towards statehood. Since we declared independence on January 15, 2018, we've had 5 constitutional conventions. We've established a government. We actually have a representative Republican form of government. And we passed 19 resolutions. And it's significant. These resolutions are real resolutions, just as qualified as you'd find in any state legislature. And we're trying right now to get the attention of the big man, that's Donald J. Trump, to support us. You know, back in the day when we're following the model of West Virginia. In fact, this process of Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution has only been attempted 3 other times, successfully, I might add, West Virginia, in Maine and Kentucky. So we're following the model of West Virginia, how they did it. And of course, they were following the model of the other 2 states. So we feel very comfortable that we're complying with that. But it was interesting because back in the day in 1861, and by the way, this is the first state attempt since 1861 to become a state following the Constitution, besides the territory. All the other ones basically came from territories. So this is something that hasn't been attempted since then. There's nobody alive, of course. There's no living history of how this process works. You have to, go to West Virginia and other places and study and research it and talk to museum people and that sort of thing to find out how this whole thing played out. But once you figure it out, it's pretty simple. And you just have to gather up all the people that you can in your counties and form committees and then work directly with your legislature. And that's really what the mandate is that we as citizens work with the legislature concerned. That's exactly what Article 3 says. And that's why if you take a look at the Jefferson movement is spoiled because of the attempt to go to the judiciary, and it doesn't say that in Article 4, Section 3. And then the Tim Draper one was to go to the executive by trying to get an election and change the Constitution, which is unconstitutional. In fact, he had his case thrown out about the three-state thing after collecting over 700,000 signatures on a petition. He had it thrown out by the California State Supreme Court because it was unconstitutional and did not comply with Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution. We comply with Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution. And I might recite that for everybody so you understand where we're going. It kind of tells you also that we are a group of what we call originalist constitutionalists. We comply with the original Constitution, much like Anton Scalia, Kavanaugh, and of course, Donald Trump, the president, is an originalist constitutionalist. But Article 4, Section 3 states this: if you want to form a new state, then you have to get the permission of the state legislature or legislatures concerned, and then that of the Congress. And nowhere in that statement does it say to have the executive approve you and put it on the ballot, nor does it say you can be approved by forming or having a lawsuit. So that's why we're constitutional. We're the only constitutional act in the nation right now. And other states have picked up on us. They're following our lead. New Illinois, new Nevada, and soon to be new Oregon and new Washington and New York. There's going to be a New York movement.
Nueva New York.
Yeah. Say that 10 times. But yeah, that's what we're doing. And it's picking up steam. Our timing is perfect, and we want to be right where we're at right now as a movement. And we anticipate that we're getting feelers from the White House that they're supporting us. They want to support us, and we need their help. And I want to go back to the West Virginia model. The West Virginians were stuck in a bind, and the bind is that as they formed the new state and they came together to then go to the Virginia legislature and negotiate with them, they couldn't do it. And the reason why they couldn't do it is because Virginia, at that point in time in 1861, withdrew and dropped out from the Union to join the Confederacy. So it left the whole movement high and dry. They had to have it approved. They went to Congress, and the Congress said, hey, guys, we want to really help you out, but you've got to get Article 4, Section 3 satisfied. You've got to be approved by your own state. So a man by the name of Francis Pierpont stood up, and he said, well, I'll be the governor of the restored government of Virginia. What do you think? And everybody said, no, that wouldn't work. Then they finally thought about it. So they tried it. And then they said, well, there's probably somebody we need to enlist to help us get it past the Congress. So they contacted a man that they all hated to help them do this. And his name was Abraham Lincoln. And so Lincoln jumped in the middle of it. And Lincoln got the Congress to go along with it. So they actually did approve the restored government of Virginia. The West Virginians then took their petition, their plea, if you will, for a new state, to the restored government of Virginia, who immediately passed it. They moved it on to Congress, and by 1863, Virginia was a new state.
Very cool. Now, when you say the approval of the legislatures, you mean the current legislature in office in each of your respective districts in California?
No, the whole state.
The whole state.
It's the state legislature, and the state legislature is comprised of 80 assembly members and 40 senators. Okay. So we have to get a resolution approved by the Senate, and also by the Assembly in California. And it's a very low threshold, basically. It's a very low bar.
And this is the existing government. This is not people that have been appointed or elected by the people who want to be New California.
That's correct. There's a separation because we do have a government that we've established, and this government has been on what's called a select-elect basis because we're new. The county chairs have been able to select who the senators are going to be and also who the assembly members are going to be. That's a temporary status situation. When there is a statehood that's been granted by the Congress, we will actually have voting for those positions.
Okay.
But we will go negotiate, and we, the citizens and the county committees, will go negotiate with our assembly members and also with our senators to get that approval. That's how it works. And those are the current elected assembly members and senators from the state of California.
So I just want to make that distinction because I think it's very powerful when you can say that people who are already in the government of California can recognize just how bad the problem is, and that they want to have, you know, another shot at a different state altogether. Now, following the Constitution and actually, you know, going by what you're told to make sure that it's legal, you know, that's one thing. But what is the response from the rest of the government of California who would probably not want you to secede? Are they willing to recognize what you guys are actually doing? And is it even up to them?
It's not up to them, and quite frankly, we don't care what they think. We really don't. You got to remember something. The only people that we're going to be working with is the legislature. Mm-hmm. The founding fathers recognized, this is why this process is the relief valve when you have a totalitarian setup in a state. The founding fathers knew that the probability would be quite high that a dictator could actually rise up in one of the states. Mm-hmm. And if that was to happen, then the whole nation, the whole union of states, the United States would come unraveled. Because if a dictator was in charge, they'd be violating Article 6 of the Constitution, the Supremacy Clause, which would mean that the dictator in the legislature, the runaway legislature, would be actually passing laws that would supersede the laws of the federal government. And the guarantee clause, or excuse me, the Supremacy Clause states that the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. And right now you see not only is California violating Article 4, Section 4, the Republican government invasion and violence, but they're superseding in just about everything in terms of laws that are passed by the state and foisted upon the rest of the nation. Yeah. And the sanctuary state law is a classic example of that. You have all these unconstitutional laws being passed on a consistent basis. One of the things that they did in California to bring about this type of dictatorship was they amended the Constitution, as I said before, over 600 times. One of the amendments to the Constitution was to bring about a professional legislature. Up until 1966, the California legislature met once every 2 years for 60 days. The professional legislature, which was sponsored by Jess Unruh in 1966, Prop 1A, was required to bring a, quote, professional legislature, which meant that they had an unrestricted legislature for 11 months every year. 11 months every year. So our legislature, and it's like people think this is normal. I bring this up to everybody, that California has an 11-month legislature. What could possibly go wrong with an 11-month legislature?
Seems like an incredible financial drain.
It's that giant sucking sound is exactly what it is. And of course, the bureaucracy just, builds itself. And every year, the California legislature and the bureaucracy down there in Sacramento gives itself a 4 to 7% pay raise. I mean, there's something wrong with that picture when businesses are fleeing the state and so on and so on. So unbridled runaway legislature with a dictator spells a dictatorship. And we got a monoparty system. Currently, we do not have of course, a legislature, a Republican Party or a Democratic Party to give us a Republican form of government. And of course, the governor, he's just a dictator. He's a figurehead for the monoparty system. So this is part of the problem that we face in California, that literally they can introduce a bill in the morning and have it passed and signed by the governor in the afternoon now. So that is just a breakdown completely of the legislative process. So there is no real legislature. We're living in a democracy, and by definition, it's a dictatorship when you have a democracy. And that's what the founding fathers did not want. So the relief valve is Article 4, Section 3, and if they're breaking, obviously violating Article 6, the Supremacy Clause. So for us to form our new state, we have to plead our case and follow the directions that were in line with forming the new state. And of course, one of those was to establish county committees in every one of the counties that wanted to join. And then after that, start to declare our independence, which we did do on January 15th, 2018. And then we had to put out grievances, and the grievances are complaints and our concerns about California.
I'm sure there was a lot.
Well, we put out on a weekly basis 95 grievances, and we read them in the public squares of many of the counties of California on Tuesdays at 11 o'clock. That was basically how we did it. We read 95. It took us 96 weeks to get through it.
Wow.
They're quite lengthy, and we think we plead our case very well to the Congress and also to the president. You know, it's important that we engage and get the president on board to support us. Absolutely imperative. We will not be a state. I don't care if you're with Obama or whoever the president would be in the future. If you want to form a state, you have to have the president to be on your side, else it's just not going to work.
It seems like an easy sell to me because California basically encapsulates everything that is wrong in America today. You know, it's like a microcosm of everything that's gone wrong. So, especially with the fact that the current government would like to secede, what point are you at now? Now that you've gotten to the airing of the grievances, you've got 52 counties on board. I mean, what is the next step?
Well, it's a 4-step process. We just finished step 2. We're entering step 3, which is the final build out of the counties and the negotiations going forward with the legislature. And we anticipate, now there's a timing issue here, and one of the reasons why we held off and actually declared independence on the 18th or the 15th of January 2018 was we understood the economic modeling of California, and that at this point in time, since October, they've really been suffering financially, even worse than before. They will not be able to sufficiently keep money in the treasury, basically, to function as a state. And we understand that that's going to happen around March or April. In fact, the reason why the state of California moved their primary up to April or to March this year, 3 months early, was so that they could float bonds and get money.
Wow.
And they're going to get money from they're anticipating that bonds will be approved for $27 billion for schools. I don't see schools getting that. They're going to use all that money just to keep the government going. And I think that's really wrong that they're doing that, of course. They're going to just misdirect it. If you notice, they've been doing a lot of that, and they haven't been paying a lot of their bills. That's the other part of it. We hear this all the time from vendors and people that do business with the state of California who've been struggling for years to get paid by the state.
Mm-hmm.
But it's getting worse now, even more. So we understand their financial dilemma, and at that point in time, we think they're going to be best and more open to negotiation. This right now, you see a wasting economy with wasting resources, not only of natural resources, but people resources. People are fleeing California like crazy.
Yeah.
For the reason, and these are our best assets that are fleeing, and the people themselves. So we have committed in New California to stand our ground and not leave. And we ask the New Californians going to be here, stay here. Don't leave. You got to stop this mess, this menace, and turn it around. So that's why we're going to go through the process, and that's where. Right now, we're entering phase 3. We anticipate that by summertime, we'll be through the state legislature, actually, and then move on to the Congress right after the election. So they'll probably approve us sometime, I'd say within probably May or so of 2021.
So by May of 2021, you anticipate the new California state being fully realized.
Fully realized. That's correct.
That's excellent. I hope that you listening at home, people who are in California, I see we got many people from California here, people saying that they left California, but this is extremely important. Can you describe for us what the borders of New California would look like in, juxtaposition to the current state of California?
Well, the borders in the north would remain the same. The borders on the east would remain the same. And most of California, as you see it, will come to a New California, about 85% of it. One of the things when we designed New California, the big concern was, population parity. How are you going to get that? And so we looked at some of the models, such as Tim Draper wanted 6 states in 2012 and 14, then he wanted 3 states. And we looked at that models, and the demographics, of course, lend itself very badly just to a one-party system. So we said, okay, what can we do to get parity where we have both party systems and people get representation? The representation thing was key because in 1964, Reynolds versus Sims was approved, and California lost, as all states did, their senators as representative of counties. They represent people now. So there's a disproportionate representation of senators in highly populated areas, in the urban areas. So, but if you take a look at what we did, we said, okay, well, let's separate it by rural versus urban. And so what we did is we looked at the population of rural California and urbanized California, such as the LA Basin, San Francisco, and Sacramento. We realized in Sacramento and also in LA and San Francisco, there were about 20 million people. And outside of that, in 85% of the land mass, the rural areas of California, you have about 18.9 million people. So, all of a sudden we just realized, well, that's parity. And so we started looking at it even deeper, and our original model called for basically a strip with the counties such as San Luis Obispo and Santa Barbara. All those would be part of California and remain that way. But as we started looking at those counties, all of them, they were predominantly rural areas. So now they've become in the mix. And what we're proposing is a state that will have a separate borders. San Francisco and Sacramento and Los Angeles will be in the north, and in the south it will not be bordered by Santa Barbara or those other counties. There will be I'm kind of leaving some stuff out because we do have a border situation proposed, and we'll have one planned to propose, but I'm not really at liberty to discuss that right now.
Not a problem. So almost a Palestinian model for the current state of California.
Well, mate,
it fits,
Right.
Do you? I imagine that there's going to be all kinds of different things you're going to have to figure out. But what do you see the government of New California looking like? Are you just going to use the old constitutional model that you have there? Are you going to be adopting anything new?
Well, we're going to we've taken a look already at the old Constitution of California, starting from the 1850s on up. And then there's other constitutions out there. We have a framework already. And we're having a series of constitutional conventions, most of them designed right now to for our own governance systems, leading into a bigger convention. We're going to have Constitutional Convention number 6 coming up in February, but there will be a bigger, grander one that'll last a long time. Our Constitution will not be approved until the Congress approves it. So, but we're going to walk in with a Constitution. It will have many of the elements that you currently have in the articles of California's Constitution, except a lot of things will change. You'll see a lot of the amendments that we're binding by. See, we are in a position where we can rewrite our own Constitution, which they cannot do that in California. If they want to amend their Constitution and change everything, they're going to have to go through all these propositions that they had, all those amendments, and bleed them out. We've had talks about this. That California really wants to save itself. They're going to have to rewrite their entire Constitution, or it's going to take them 150 years at least to get to a point where they can settle off all these constitutional amendments and remain a viable part. I think that a smaller California without the resources and the drag, I mean, California legislature, if you talk to them, they'll tell you that rural California is really a drag to them economically. Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll free them up from the drag. The problem is that they've got themselves in such a situation. It's a point of no return. They've overtaxed themselves. They've overregulated themselves because they've had this 11-month legislature, and they've just literally killed off business. And of course, it's business that's the driver, a free economic system that's been the driver for California's success and will be the driver for New California. California right now is ranked number 50th in business friendliness in the nation.
I'd heard that, yeah.
It's just amazing. And then, of course, the education system has been, is also like number 47 or 48. And again, one of the things that's really the biggest problem for California is its graft and corruption. And that's one of the things that's the most telling things that we've discovered is the massive graft and corruption from California. Billions and billions of dollars that are being bled off. You have the situation right now that came out in the Epoch Times. They pointed out the money laundering scam that's going on with the California public retirement system, or PERS, where they have a red Chinese, listen to this, a communist Chinese and he's a Chinese guy who's also part of the People's Liberation Army, and he buys their equities. He runs around buying up investments for PERS. Well, guess what? It's not a shocker that he's buying up investment instruments for the communist Chinese military.
Wow.
So these dollars that people are investing in PERS are going right over to those Chinese. That's why they're getting such a brilliant army and military, because PERS is paying for it.
Wow.
And this, I mean, it's just a fabulous money laundering scheme for China. And of course, what happens is, you probably know, that if they don't make that 7% payout, then they have to rely upon all the counties, all the cities, all the municipalities to pony up money to raise that margin out for payouts to 7%. So if it comes in at 4%, well, who's controlling that 4% return on investment is Xi Jinping. He's the head of the Communist Party. He's controlling that. So this is the stuff that's going. This is only the tip of the iceberg. We could spend hours talking about this.
Oh, don't doubt it.
The education system, it's all replete. And of course, the beneficiaries of this money laundering scheme, and others, especially in public education all the way through, are the cartels, the Mexican cartels,
yep,
and Red China.
I want to talk more about the corruption going on in California, but first I'd like to get an introduction to the audience for Greg, because Greg, you're just a normal California resident, and you saw what was going on. You wanted to get involved. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I moved up in the mountains to fish mainly. I basically wanted to retire in the mountains, and I got an opportunity with my company to be able to move, and I started fishing a lot, just enjoying life like I was retired. And my wife, who is she is a political force. She's my hero. She's involved with Latinos for Trump, and has been all over the nation with events for taco politics and all kinds of stuff. She's a Hispanic woman that is ever Trumper. She wears her Trump gear, and she takes more heat because she's Hispanic and conservative. So we moved up here, and she was involved with Ken Hamlin and learning about conservative values way back, 30 years ago. And we moved up in the mountains, and I'm fishing and having a good time, and I'm seeing everything that's going on in the news. And she was involved for 12 months. I mean, about 12 months or 9 months before me. And she was doing politics on a religious basis. She's like an incredible woman. And so I started looking around me saying, what's going on? And I'm thinking, we got to do something here. We're losing our country. We're losing our country's losing its faith. California's losing its people, gaining how many illegals that actually recently killed one of our sheriffs in our county. And I'm like one cog in this 52 cog wheel with Paul Preston. Mm-hmm. And I started saying, I need to do something. I can't sit on my laurels. I need to be a fisher of men for our country and for California, because I love this state. My parents aren't from this state, but I ended up in the state in the 60s in the Bay Area, and I grew up there. And ended up conservative. I don't know how, because the Bay Area is pretty liberal.
You're a smart man.
And it's just been a great time to see people get excited about a hope. Because in California we have no hope. We have mono party. So, Gavin and his whole clan, they want to recall Gavin. I keep telling Paul, we need to recall California, because California is a mess. And it's been a mess. They're just running roughshod on us. We have no representation. This isn't about being conservative or whatever. It's about everybody hates taxes. Mm-hmm. Everybody hates the housing prices being so high. You buy a 1,100 square foot home in California Bay Area, and it's worth, $1 million. That's insane. Nobody can afford $1 million home. It's insane. So California, they're leaving us, and then the illegals are coming in. And the homeless, we have a third of all the homeless in the whole nation in California. Yeah. Just ask Maxine Waters about homeless. Just go down the corner in San Francisco and look at the needle exchange while somebody's dropping a deuce in front of you eating dinner.
Oh.
What's wrong with that picture?
Yeah.
That's an ugly picture. And I know it's crass, but at the same time, that's what's happening to people in San Francisco. You know, so I came on because I looked around and I said, you know, we got to do something. And if we, the people, don't do something, then we only have the Chinese to thank, because we'll be speaking Chinese here real soon. And that's not good.
No, it's not good at all. I mean, it seems that the government in California is just perfectly fine allowing it to continue to crumble. You know, obviously they cannot sustain it at the current rate. So, I mean, like, this seems like an incredibly viable option. Have you actually gotten any type of a response from Gavin Newsom? I would imagine he's got to be very concerned about what's going on, because you guys are about to take 90% of the landmass of the state away from him.
I think Nancy Pelosi found out last week, right, Paul? That,
yeah,
California
she found out
here.
last week.
I like that.
Yeah.
What did she say?
Well, she was a little predisposed and busy.
Okay.
Yeah, with impeachment nonsense.
When she found out, and of course that's been a problem.
Yeah.
For her.
Well, we're trying to get counties to pay attention to us, like the constitutional sheriffs. We're doing things to get a hold of those folks. I'm like one cog in a 52 cog wheel, so we have a lot of other people involved in this state, and Paul's the wheel himself, and he's the catalyst to this thing. We do events, try to do events once a month. We do Patriot potlucks to try to get people on board. We're not advertising. We're not asking for money at this point and things like that. But we definitely want people in California to be involved. If you're in El Dorado County or Yuba or whatever county you're in, look us up. Come to a meeting. Come help. We need your help out there. So We the People movement, and I'm We the People.
That's great. I did put your website, newcaliforniastate.com, in the description of the show, and I've dropped it into the chat box a couple of times. Let's get back to the talking about the corruption that we have there in California, because California seems to be one of the most corrupt states in the union. Do you think that by basically isolating those three individual areas and leaving the original California state, do you think that will take care of a fair amount of corruption there?
Yes, I do. I really do. And I think that what you're going to see is Donald Trump started to step in and really the president, especially now that this impeachment thing, this fiasco, whatever you want to call it, has sort of come and gone, because I think it's gone more than you're going to do anything else now. But you're going to see a lot more responsiveness, a lot more assertiveness by the Justice Department and other places. You know, I was driving around this afternoon, and I get a call from one of my many sources I have for my radio show, Agenda 21 Radio, and had a conversation with an individual who his family member, I don't want to say too much, but his family member works for a state agency. And I guess since the last couple of days, there's a great panic that's sort of starting to settle in some of these state bureaucracies. And I don't want to mention which one they were talking about. And what the realization is that corruption is going to be found out. And the other thing, too, like I said, is that Donald Trump, at some point in time, in the near future, he will declare that the cartels are terrorist organizations. Mm-hmm. Now, what that means is that really should really set a lot of people on notice right up front, who, if you have any kind of corrupt ties, money ties to the cartels, you're on notice, because you could be linked to them as a terrorist. And as we know, Donald Trump means business. Mm-hmm. And I do anticipate at some point in time in the near future that that linkage to a lot of people, including Nancy Pelosi, who has been openly engaged in a lot of conversations with a lot of cartel members just recently in Italy.
Really? Oh, yes. I covered that. Yeah.
Yeah. She was there with the squad and everything. And of course, that was an interesting conversation. Listen, people are in public, and we have pictures of her and others meeting, including El Chapo's wife. Mm-hmm. I mean, what's up with that? You have Nancy Pelosi meeting with El Chapo's wife. I mean, these are pictures that are taken in Venice and in Rome. how, so that's why I say, when she starts to hear these things that, Donald Trump, and you heard the right placement there. Donald Trump came out just as they were starting the impeachment hearings, said, well, we're just going to declare the cartel a terrorist organization. And of course, you just knew that Nancy Pelosi was going, oh, no.
That's bad news for a lot of people in California.
That's bad news, right? It is.
So what about some of the biggest issues facing California outside of corruption, like water management? I know that water management's a huge thing. I've seen a couple different people asking about the Oroville Dam in California.
Right.
But I mean, because from what I understand, and my knowledge is limited on it, but that the water from the northern portion of the state is being siphoned off and sent off to these highly populated urban areas, and they're not leaving enough water for other areas of the state. So how would that solve it?
Well, we intend to rebuild or build out the entire California water project. Jerry Brown, when he was governor in his first couple of terms back in the 80s, did away with that. We operate on about 60% of the water project that was designed. You have the Auburn Dam as an example that was nearly built, but they stopped it in Jerry Brown's time. And of course, it sits there. It's got the foundation. It's got all the foundational work done to it. I would understand, and the people I've talked to at the Department of the Interior said that there's real plans to build that dam out. And of course, it's not just for water storage, for flood protection and that sort of thing, but there's also a whole area down south that we could utilize and build out and build reservoirs and complete the water project. That would solve a lot of the problems for water. But of course, that's very disruptive because you got a lot of people that have their own contracts for water and the way that they've got it. The way that they've got it set up right now is it's becoming nothing more than a system by which the government is using it as a weapon. They weaponize water against the people. And that all will stop with New California. That we will not be taking people's water rights or anything like that. Same with the Second Amendment. Second Amendment issues, we'll be an open carry state. Hello. It's not inconceivable that we would do that. You'd be able to, this whole situation with the ammo ban. Listen, the only reason they're trying to restrict your weapons is so that they can take them.
Absolutely.
That's the only reason they're doing this. This happens repeatedly all over the place. You heard about New Zealand just recently doing buyback programs. Australia started taking weapons. And of course, you have the whole situation going on now with Second Amendment issues in Virginia, where the governor is talking about confiscating weapons.
I saw that.
That's not going to happen, by the way. I just hate to tell the governor in Virginia that those Virginians are not going to let that happen. But, and of course, we don't want to have any violence. But, when the government is doing things that promote violence or take away your your God-given rights, these are God-given rights they're messing with.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a responsibility and a duty to make sure that doesn't happen. And that's explained very well in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. So they are messing with fire, and they're messing with the American people right now over there in Virginia. But California is not too far behind, as you know. They passed the most restrictive gun laws in the nation.
Yes.
But the bottom line to things like water, the things to property management, you're going to see a robust, situation in terms of the clearing of forests, forest management.
That's been
We're going to get back to all that stuff. And we're going to open up the lands to farming by way of ample water supply for farmers. No longer are we going to fallow the land and disrupt and destroy, our farming communities, our agricultural communities. That's just not going to happen. And again, we're going to be open for business. That's the economic model about what California is going to be about. It's going to be not the economic model that you have here in California at all.
So how do you see the new economic model changing there in the new state of California?
Well, right now we have about a 13.5% personal tax rate. We're going to drive that down. We're looking at economic models or state models from Florida to Texas to Idaho. And also, what was it that brought California to the zenith in the 80s? What was that modeling like? And again, the key thing is low taxes. So we're going to cut taxes dramatically. You saw what happened when Donald Trump, same thing, the same effect took place with Reagan. And I can remember when Reagan cut taxes, that all of a sudden the economy just blew up, and it was pretty obvious that the more business you did, the more tax revenue you brought in. So taxes went up, accumulated as the free market economy started to boom. So the killer of that is, of course, these restrictions and these programs that come out of the California Air Resources Board, which, by the way, is a sham. The California Air Resources Board, the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and the Coastal Commission are all shams.
And
this
how
whole
so?
thing about environmentalism, which has been driven, this sustainability movement, is all part of the sham.
Just another method to siphon money out of the pockets of taxpayers?
That's correct. That's exactly right.
Yeah, you know, this is another reason I think President Trump would be very grateful if the new California state was to be created, because you mentioned the forestry management. That's been a huge issue in the last couple of years, these forest fires, or wildfires rather, because there has been, you know, pretty much zero forest management. You know, they're not clearing anything away, so then they can go ahead and siphon up billions of dollars in emergency funds every year.
That's correct. It's called the disaster capitalism.
Disaster capitalism. How sad is it?
That's the actual term people use to describe it.
Yeah.
Is that it's disaster capitalism, and that, of course, is something that won't happen in New California. We will manage our forces. We'll manage our natural resources. You know, that's it. That's the thing, is you have these great environmentalists who come along, and they have been absolutely brutal on the California environment. I mean, this whole thing with the staged droughts and all this other stuff over, you know, fish that don't exist, you know, that whole thing, the lack of forest management. I mean, just to mention a few, but then, you know, you had Jerry Brown and you had Kamala Harris back in 2011. And what they did is that they signed off, they got rid of the California Department of Justice's Bureau of Narcotics. Now, the Bureau of Narcotics was responsible for keeping the cartels off of California land so they wouldn't grow marijuana. So they eliminated 400 agents in 2011. They literally opened the door for the cartels to come onto public land, private land, and exploit it and grow marijuana. So the foothills in California exploded with marijuana grows. And of course, the cartels were all behind this. These marijuana grows were just brutal to the environment and to the forests. They were siphoning them off water. They were using pesticides and herbicides to make the marijuana grow, and various fertilizers that were all poisoning the water systems and the ecosystem. It just destroyed millions upon millions of square acres in California. So much for the environmentalists that we've elected over the last 8 years in environmentalism. This is what we get. We get exploitation of our natural resources, and they've been doing it ever since about 2010.
So how is law enforcement going to change with the new California state?
Well, first of all, we're going to support law enforcement. What a concept. We're going to support lawful behavior. And right now, California, in my opinion, is deliberately passing unlawful laws. They want lawlessness. They're inviting it, and at every turn they're inviting it and promoting it. And that is what we're going to stop. We're not going to allow this thing like with Prop 47. And those of you that aren't familiar with Prop 47, but Prop 47 was brought in to kind of help alleviate the prison overcrowding and so on, so they thought, and lessen the number of felonies and lessen the number of jailable offenses. So what they did is they raised it $950 to a felony level. That would be if you did damage or you stole something or whatever, you wouldn't be charged a felony. You wouldn't be charged. You'd be charged a misdemeanor at less than $950, but at $950 you could be charged a felony and arrested. So right now we have open, blatant thieving going on in all of our big, like if you talk about some of the big stores. Home Depot and all these other stores, you have all these bad actors going in, gathering up $900 worth of product and just walking right out with it.
You're kidding.
Because this is what they're doing. This is, and that's Prop 47.
Wow.
And they started Prop 47 back in 2014, said, oh, that's a great way to keep prisons, people out of prison. And so then they re-upped it. They actually passed a law in the legislature, allowing Prop 47 to stick around to 2024. Then they'd reassess it again. I mean, this is just amazing. I've actually seen this happen myself in one of the Home Depots here locally, and I was shocked. But the people said, no, we let them go. We don't want to have any problems with them. In fact, a story was relayed to me today about a store up here locally that the butcher store, and they bought about $60 worth of meat, and they started to go out the door, and the store owner stopped them. And of course, the scuffle ensued, and so that they called the police. The police said, "Well, I'd really like to help you out, but probably shouldn't want to charge these people and let me go look for them because they'll come back and sue you because you tried to stop them and you put hands on them."
That's insane.
That's what's going on.
That is insane. And I imagine that the big box stores don't care too much. I mean, they probably get to write off a ton. I mean, everything that gets stolen, they just get to write it off, maybe make an insurance claim. They're going to get reambusrsed. So
they raise the prices. They'll just raise the prices.
Raise the prices. So there's absolutely no incentive for anybody to do the right thing. They're teaching. It's like crime school in California.
That's really what it is.
Yeah,
it's crime school.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Crime school, yeah.
Well,
they pull right up to Victoria's Secret. My daughter has friends that work there. They pull up to the front, run in and grab a bunch of stuff and jump in the car and leave.
It's just insane. I can't even imagine living in a place like that. Well, no wonder you guys have been so successful.
Yeah. Well, people are tired. People are definitely tired of it going on. And
yeah.
That's how come you get thousands of people wanting to do a recall petition of Gavin. And it's not just Gavin. It's the whole state. It's everything. For how many years? I mean,
at decades. I mean,
yeah, decades. You're right. It's
California's been in a bad spot.
It's taken decades to get here. That's what a lot of people don't understand. It's just taken decades and decades and decades, and now we're here, and people are looking around like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do about it? Well, now there's really only one option left for people: to stand your ground, create a new state, and go to New California and be with New California. And there is no, I hate to break it to everybody, but there is absolutely zero Republican Party in California left.
Mm-hmm.
We reported 2 weeks ago that and I'm talking about the California Republican Party. I want to be clear because there's a lot of the county Republican parties that are really still strong and viable, and they're doing really, really good work. But again, it's in the individual counties. See, this is the strength of these things, is if you have good, strong individual counties. But the California Republican Party, which is, in my opinion, deliberately for the last several years trying to destroy its own party. And you can see the evidence of that with two propositions for redistricting in 2008 and 2010, and then the top two in 2010, which allows for the jungle primary, which, in other words, the top two in the primary, regardless of party now, go to the general election. And of course, that just eliminates the Republican Party because there's been no support for Republicans.
So it's two Democrats every time.
Right. That's right.
Why would they agree to something like that?
Well, actually, they sponsored it.
Oh my goodness!
It was the Republican Party of California that sponsored them.
Oh,
well,
preservation. Where are you guys? That's crazy.
Right. They keep it. You hear all of our representatives in Washington always talking about how we're a democracy. We're not a democracy. We're a constitutional republic.
Exactly.
Because one of the framers of the Constitution framed it like this: a democracy is two wolves telling a sheep what's for dinner.
Exactly.
and we're for dinner right now. We're the sheep in this state. So it's a big mess, man. Big mess.
Well, Paul, what else are you hoping to change by the creation of the new California state? I mean, what other problems do you see in California that are going to be addressed by the creation of this?
Well, I think obviously the education system is going to be completely revamped. Our economy is going to be completely revamped. How we deal with our environment, we'll deal with it in a very realistic, pragmatic fashion. The people don't understand. I am an environmentalist. I taught biological sciences and environmentalism for a long time. Mm-hmm. What we have seen really is literally a raping over the last 10 to 12 years of the environment of California. And it's clear that has happened. I drive up and down the state all the time, and I can see the results of the bad forest management, the poor water management, the whole, created drought scheme that they had going on. All this stuff has really destroyed California from an environmental standpoint. We have to recover now. The last time we had such environmental damage being done was during the gold rush, when we had placer minings all over the place, that sort of thing. That was really bad, but this is just as bad when you have so much pollution and poison that usually is caused by some NGO or friends of NGOs that are friends of a county supervisor or whatever, granting them the use of the land as they please and tearing it up and ripping up, tearing up and destroying the environment. All that quid pro quo, I'll use that, has really had a terrible effect on California environmentally. So we're going to be great stewards of the environment in California. California is an absolute beautiful place. We can bring it back, but it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot of dedication on everybody's part to do that. But the environment is just one way we're going to do that. The other way, of course, is the economy, education, good schools, and law enforcement is going to be a premier part of what we're doing right now. We're really focusing on working with the county sheriffs and law enforcement because we want to see a smooth transition from old California to new California. This is going to happen. This is a constitutional process. I'm going to explain that. And we're in it. We're doing it. We're winning it. And a lot of people don't understand that once you start these constitutional processes, what happens is that they continue to go until they're done. Just like impeachment. Impeachment goes until it's done. And of course, they've had impeachment interrupt us because of Nancy Pelosi. And the whole thing with Nancy Pelosi is that what she has done is corrupted the impeachment process. But by the way, ladies and gentlemen, as they've corrupted California constitutionally, she's trying to corrupt the federal government constitutionally. So you're actually seeing this demonstration play out right now. So
yeah, I think Nancy Pelosi has a lot to worry about when this goes through. So I would imagine that the new state government of New California would be a fairly limited form of government. You guys are obviously not looking to repeat the same mistakes in terms of the bloat and the bureaucracy.
Right.
Yeah.
The state government of California functions on, are you ready for this, around 26 to 30 billion dollars a year.
Wow.
That's a beat. And of course the bureaucracies, this other element of this other branch of government that's been created has really taken over. It really has. There is no real representation that goes on with our legislators because of the monoparty system, but they're just afraid to fight back against the bureaucrats. They're so every time they pass bills based upon what the bureaucrats want. And of course, it's very self-serving to the huge bureaucracy. We have a huge deep state here in California, and it's very influential around the world, of course, because of its money. And that since that, it's just kind of interesting. Under Brown and others, they've tried to really reach out to other world leaders and get in touch, from the Ukraine to Georgia to China, even. To be more of an international state within the union, which ultimately is unconstitutional. It violates the supremacy clause in Article 4, Section 4. And you've seen this with Jerry Brown, and you have agreements, treaties that have been signed by state agencies of all things over the years that are totally illegal and unconstitutional. A lot of this is going to start coming out. It's not real public yet, but it's going to start coming out about how corrupt through and through the California state government has been, especially in the last 10 years, and how they're answering to the cartels and how they're really answering to China. And this is all out there now. I'm not the only one reporting it.
Oh, it's public knowledge.
It's public knowledge, right?
Well, Paul, I think this is an excellent time to talk about what our viewers can do to get involved and what we're looking at here. If you've just joining the program, Paul had mentioned early on that we're looking at a May 2021 timeline here. The new California state should be in existence by May 2021. That is very close. It's right around the corner. We've got a lot of people from California here in the audience tonight. So, Paul, what can they do?
Well, the first thing is they can go to New California State website, newcaliforniastate.com, and check out the website, learn about what we're doing, get the constitutional information behind you. If you are in a given county, we have a sign-up format that you can go and sign up and enlist yourself to become part of the counties and become part of your area, become part of the negotiation team, basically, because you have a right. You know, this process does not involve an election. There's not going to be an election out there. The process of forming a state, if we were to go to an election, we'd be in violation of Article 4, Section 3, which is what happened to Tim Draper. So this process is actually a process where you have to get involved, get engaged at the county level in your own county, and then come up with the strategies. And we have some ideas on how this is all going to work with the county representatives meeting with their legislators who don't want to meet with you. They just don't want to meet with you. You can well imagine. So they're going to be forced to meet with you. And at some point in time, they're going to like meeting with you because they're going to realize that you're there to help them and help California. You know, like I said, we want to see this is a win-win for California and a win-win for New California. We don't want to see New California rolling over and passing away, you know, because that would not be any good for anybody. But we want to, obviously, I can tell you, though, it would be in their best interest, especially as we get through this process, it would be in their best interest to change their constitution and do the right thing economically. And I suspect they probably will, because, you know, we're going to put some demands on them, since the bottom line is that New California, which will make a complete economic shift away from the modeling right now, which is an anti-business model. We will be large and in charge in terms of tax revenue that will be coming in. It's not that we're going to overtax people, but as a result of a booming economy, which is what you're seeing right now in the United States. And of course, this is the same model that Reagan followed. And that's the same model that we had in California. We had plenty of money for the state's budget every year. But we did not have over-regulation and over-taxation that did it, because we didn't have the bureaucracy back in the day. Before 1964, we had a very limited government. And so we will limit the government. We'll be putting that money back to good use to the people. Infrastructure will be a #1 consideration for New California, because the infrastructure in California, as you know, if you drive up and down the freeways, you see that there's some freeways that are really better off than others, and others that are just terrible. And some cities and counties are very, very poor. And the county supervisors need to stand strong. I know there's a lot of counties and supervisors and other municipalities are being compromised right now because of this whole scheme for pensions, which of course is the PERS and everything. You got to stand strong and deny the access to your county finances by the state. They're just going to steal your money, as they're doing in a lot of places right now. But that would probably help your situation out as we make a transition. But one of the things that's going to happen, that there's going to be a date certain in the future where everything in California, all these laws from California Air Resources Board, all these laws from the Coastal Commission, Cal EPA, which is basically not laws, they're regulations. Listen, these are regulations by unelected bureaucrats that are foisting money upon you, restrictions upon you, and limiting and taking away your property in many cases. And that'll all go away at some point in time. You'll be granted your Second Amendment rights, full stop. Just everything you needed for your Second Amendment is going to come back to you. We're not going to restrict it like it is right now in California. You know, 62,000 people were just denied the ability to buy ammunition for their guns by the state of California. That was just last week it was announced. They were so proud that they limited, you know, they had these laws that restricted 62,000 people from buying ammunition in California. And of course, there's a lot of people who aren't buying ammunition in California because they don't want to risk it. You know, so
by getting on a list or something.
Yeah, getting on a list or something like that. They just don't want to risk it. So, you know, that's all going to go away. All we're going to do is a federal check. That's it. And we believe that people, especially people who have training with their weapons and so on, CCWs, these are all responsible gun owners. They know how to deal. There's safety. You know, they have safety in mind, and they won't be felons anymore. I mean, you know, some people right now, they've got guns in their closet and they don't realize they're already felons. So they've committed felonies just by simply having these guns in their closet in certain configurations, you know. And if the Department of Justice comes in and seizes your gun, you're a felon. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And of course, we've seen some people. I know there's a situation in Bakersfield where a very prominent figure down there was trying to comply with California's gun laws and report his weapons, and he thought he was doing the right thing. And they came out and they frog marched him out. They put him under arrest, and his whole world has been turned upside down. It's like facing 50 years in jail.
That's insane.
He was just trying to comply. You know, this kind of stuff, this stuff is all going to go. That will not exist in New California. Will not.
So do you already have like a structure and a plan for exactly what the government's going to look like in terms of like departments, you know, offices? Obviously, you know, you're going to have Department of Education, you're going to have the Department of the Interior and the various law enforcement agencies. But what other branches are you going to have there?
Well, we're going to have fundamentally, there's always a fundamental, you know, structure to government in all states, and we'll follow that fundamental structure. The fundamental, there's just like dozens of, when you take a look at like the Department of Education, or you take a look at what's going on with some of these other departments, they'll have numerous subsets of government,
right,
of bureaucracies. All that stuff goes away.
Okay.
There's no reason to have all, and again, it's because people are taking jobs in the government and they're recreating jobs and they're justifying their jobs. All that will go away with the limited government in New California. And there will be a transition time. We will structure the government according to how our representatives and the people coming forward in the New California government want it to be structured. And there's going to be certain things we have to do, like a Department of Education. But it's not going to be a Department of Education that is dictatorial, such as what we're seeing right now with California's Department of Education. Education is going to be returned to the counties where it belongs.
Good.
And your local municipalities will also be able to, excuse me, they'll also be able to justify, you know, what they're doing in their education system.
How soon after New California becomes a state will you hold your first election there?
That's a good question. That's a function of the Congress coming up with what the date will be. But at some time certain, there will be elections, and usually it's about 18 months.
Okay. And what will this look like at the federal level? You'll have to have new senators and congressmen, I imagine, for the new state of California. Will that be at that time, or will there be people who are appointed to those positions at the time that the state comes into existence?
Right now, and this goes into the discussion of Reynolds versus Sims. And this is what is, I think, really important for people to understand. The whole notion of representation, which is what we don't have now in rural California, or in rural New York, or in rural Oregon, or in rural Illinois, is that when, and it goes back to really what we're seeing, a little bit of history about what we're seeing with this impeachment process as well. Back in the day when they were forming the Constitution, they landed upon having 3 branches of government. Mm-hmm. Now, we're so used to 3 branches of government, we just accept it, that it's been around forever. It was the United States of America and the American Constitution that was formed that brought us that. First time in human history. Now, the other thing that was significant, well, the first time in human history, you had a Declaration of Independence and you had a Bill of Rights and you developed the Constitution. But the Constitution, when it was developed and stated that we're going to have 3 divisions of government, legislature, executive, and judicial, it said that people are going to be represented by members of the House of Representatives, and you're going to have this House of Representatives as the legislative block. Well, people that were in states that had fewer people than other states, such as Maine versus like New York, mm-hmm. Maine said, you know, look at, we've only got, not Maine, but say Vermont. Vermont said, we've only got, 1 million people and you've got 5 million people. There's a problem with that because you have more representation. So therefore, we just can't have a mono party or a unicameral legislature. And so they said there's a problem because we want equal representation, equal footing with New York. So it was the Connecticut Compromise really is what it was. And if your listeners or your viewers want to take a look at this, they can do this. But the key guy behind the Connecticut Compromise was Benjamin Franklin. And Benjamin Franklin was the oldest person at the Constitutional Convention. And back in the day, and when he was a printer, he came up with the very first political cartoon. And it was a wooden carving that he used to put it out on print, because he was a printer in Philadelphia. 1752, he came up with this. And it said, join or die. And it was a picture of a snake that was cut up into different segments. And he had put in the initials of every one of the colonies on every one of those segments. And he meant literally join or die. Yeah, there it is right there. And people didn't understand what he was talking about. But see, he knew in 1752 there was a revolution coming. And this revolution to push out and get rid of, the king was a real thing that was going to have to happen. And so he said, we're either going to have to join, because right now we're segmented by all these colonies. There's nothing to keep us together, or we will not survive. So lo and behold, they had the revolution. They declared themselves independent, and they went to constitutional conventions starting after 1783. By 1789, they were really, or 1787, they were really in a bind because they had the 3 levels of government. They got all that. Then they said, okay, we got this, but we also have this problem of representation. So how do you solve it? And it was really Benjamin Franklin said, well, what we need to do is give every state 2 senators. And I'm leaving a lot of the story out. It's a little bit more dramatic than that, and I would encourage your viewers to look into it. And so they came up with the notion that every state would have 2 senators. So states would be equal to one another, and they would plug that into a second box, if you will, and create a second box within the legislature. So if you have, imagine this, 3 boxes, you have the legislature, you have the executive and judicial, but the legislature was then divided up by members of the House of Representatives and a Senate. And the Senate would be the balance against power and the mob, literally the mob that you have in the House of Representatives, because the mob serves its own interest. And boy, can't we see that happening right now with this whole situation. We're in a constitutional crisis.
Yes.
You can thank Benjamin Franklin and those people back in 1787. This is no joke. You can thank them for putting a stop to this mob. Like I was telling somebody else last night on a radio show that I can hear the echoes of these people talking. The founding fathers are speaking to us right now today. Says, look, you have a tyrant and a tyranny going on in the House of Representatives in the name of Nancy Pelosi. It's a democracy. That's what we're seeing there, is a democracy.
Yes.
And guess what? You have the power that is existent in the Senate, which is equal to the power of the House, blocking them. You see, the founding fathers were so concerned about separation of powers. They were intensely concerned about it. They knew this kind of a situation could happen. And here you have Mitch McConnell, the mumbles, as I usually call him. But boy, he's stepping up. He said, hey, this is not going to exist. And he's saying the Senate is just as strong, if not stronger. And by the way, Nancy, it's a different place, the Senate, and you're not a senator. You have no control here. You have absolutely no control. So you're seeing this whole dance play out right now in the Constitution, and it's working.
It certainly
it's
is.
absolutely working. So, but our form of government will go back to the model that was requiring a senator to have power. Now, this is where you have a problem. In the big federal model of our government system, you have the United States, which have subsets called states, and then those states have subsets called counties, and the counties are the basic fundamental governance body for the state. Now, California has 58 counties, and all 58 counties all have their own sovereignty to them. And that's kind of the quintessential thing. The little federal model is what I'm talking about, where you have states and then you have counties as subsets. So the little federal model, when it was developed, required that every county had a senator so that the senator could represent the resources of the counties. It's just kind of simple. Just like the U.S. senators for the states represented the resources of the state. That way you would have an equal balance in the legislature of, say, your state legislature. So our senators in California, as our assembly members, represents the House, they had a bicameral two-party system. Reynolds versus Sims in 1964 came about. In that decision, they decided to do away with the sovereignty reach, and that state senators no longer represented sovereignty, but they had to be determined by district based upon population. So I said to you earlier that the two population zones in California with the most population is San Francisco and Los Angeles, with 20 million people. Well, in the California configuration, between those two areas, of the 40 senators, in those two yellow spots, of the 40 senators, you find 33 senators.
Good Lord.
In that red area that's there, there it is. That red area right there has 7 senators.
Wow.
And that's it.
That's such an incredible distance, the landmass, only 7 people representing it. That's insane.
Yes. Isn't that just amazing?
Yeah.
So they're divided up by districts. And again, in order to get the, the population numbers that you want, 1 million piece, you have to divide it up that way. So I said, well, let's go ahead and base this model of New California on Reynolds versus Sims. And what we'll also do is do something else. This is the big kicker that really kind of drives the whole thing for New California, and why everybody in the United States is looking at it right now. We have already broken the model of Reynolds versus Sims. What we did, and Greg will tell you this, is all of our county chairs were given the authority by our charter to select a senator for each county. So right now, New California is, I guess you would say, in violation of Reynolds versus Sims. And that's because we can. And this is why we can, because we're going to claim as a new state going out that we want to exercise our 10th Amendment right, which will supersede the Reynolds versus Sims right. And we can tell them to basically say, we're going to be a state. We've already got a senator assigned for each county. And that's the way it's going to be for us. And I know they're not going to some people are really going to go crazy with that. In fact, the left is going to go bonkers. They don't want to see this sort of thing going on. But you can see the lack of representation just by the model of New California that exists there. In other words, you talk about our water rights being stripped from us in the rural areas of California. It's the Reynolds versus Sims decision that has brought us to the level of all those different, the population of the senators, at 33 senators in those 2 yellow areas. They have the ability to control everything. In the rural area of California, it has the ability to control nothing. That's because they don't have any representation.
Exactly.
So that's what they call representation. So we're poised to do that. Once we get approval, we're going to basically break the mold. And we've had a lot of constitutional thinkers and personalities, TV and otherwise, contact us, and kind of want to figure out what's going on, how it works. But so far we're passing constitutional muster with everybody, and that's why that's why it's working. It's a constitutional process. It's moving forward. We are moving forward, and I try to tell people this. And I know Greg gets this question all the time by the people he talks to. Well, it's never going to happen. It's not happening. When is it going to happen? And of course, I've been trying to get everybody in New California to say it is happening, and it's going to happen probably in 2021. This is the projection. And they say, well, how long is it? And they're startled to find out we've been really at this for about 5 years.
What about the governor of New California?
Oh, very good question. We know that what we have to do is come up with an interim governor, and one that will be somebody who's experienced. And we have nominated Rick Perry to be our interim governor. And I mean on an interim standpoint, and if you think about it, he is absolutely an excellent choice to do this. Now, everybody says, well, I kept on getting questions at the convention. It was really kind of cute. Well, doesn't he have to be eligible to be the governor of New California? Doesn't he have to have some sort of I said, what eligibility rule do you want? You know, I said, we could. I said, basically, I said, well, you know, we got a hold of that name primarily because we understood he was going to be leaving the energy department. And I said to myself, you know, we've got to jump on this because he was the Secretary of Agriculture for the state of Texas. He understands about agriculture big time. But he was also the governor for 3 terms, and he's the guy who set the whole thing in motion for the economic boom of Texas. And so here you have somebody who's also played on the worldwide stage as energy secretary. And I know everybody says, well, what about this Burisma? He's never involved in any of the Burisma stuff. Actually, what he was involved with was Ukraine, was selling Ukraine United States natural gas. In which he was successfully able to get big contracts for the United States out of the Ukraine to help the Ukrainian people, I might add, you know, because the other way it was operating with Biden and so on, as we're finding out, is a little bit more corrupt. So, but anyway, to have him come along and become the interim governor, we've made the request to him. We've nominated him through a process or a resolution, and we won't hear anything back affirmatively or whatever until after the end of the year. So he's got some obligations, and he really can't make any comment about it until at the beginning of the year. Well,
as soon as you hear this is something I'm very interested in. I mean, obviously this would give you guys even more credibility, right, if Rick Perry accepted this nomination.
And the other part of it is that we're looking around and thinking, you know, who else can best assist us? You know, are there other governors that could help us out? And of course, we're working through some of our contacts to actually have Nikki Haley come out and join us.
I would really like Nikki Haley too. How about Devin Nunes? Have you spoken with Devin Nunes about this?
Oh yeah, we've spoken to Devin Nunes about it. I'd rather not comment on that. Sorry.
We love Devin Nunes, just so you know.
We all love Devin Nunes.
Yeah, we're big fans of Devin.
Yeah, we are absolutely huge fans. He's doing a fantastic job. And but you know, we've had some discussions, but we're not at liberty to discuss it.
Okay, all right, that's no problem.
But aren't you proud? Aren't you proud of him, though? I mean,
yes,
great American.
So proud of him, and he's been vindicated.
And even Kevin McCarthy, you know, I mean, there was a lot. You know, I was kind of on the fence with him for a long time. But boy, has he stepped up. It's just all really of those Republicans. What's wrong with this Republican group up there now? They started to rally around the president and the Constitution, which is wonderful.
Well, you know, I honestly believe that President Trump has kind of just reinvigorated them. I mean, they didn't have adequate leadership in the past. You know, I mean, it was a uniparty. And now there is some definition between the Democrats and the Republicans. I mean, like we have clearly people who are interested in upholding the Constitution, actually representing their citizens, and that's not something we've had for so many years. You know, I mean, I'm so happy with the job President Trump is doing and everything he's done for the Republican Party too. It's a big game changer for all of us.
Yeah, it is. It really truly is, and I know that with that kind of help that's out there, you know, we're very realistic about this. Now, one of the things I want to say is everybody thinks it's this is all a big Republican conservative thing. Most people in New California that are of the conservative nature feel totally abandoned by the Republican Party, and I do too. I'm moving back to decline the state and out of the Republican Party. I left the Republican Party back in 1992 and came back in 2016 to vote for Trump. But there is no real Republican Party any longer in California, but there's also no Democratic Party. And this is where we have a responsibility as in New California. We have an absolute responsibility to follow Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution and provide for a Republican form of government, which means don't be surprised when New California rushes out there and says, we need Democrats. And we're recruiting Democrats right now, actually. One of the first things we tick off when we're asking, are you a Democrat? Because we want a rebuilt Democratic Party. And I sense even that the president wants that. I think we're all kind of looking around the two-party system, and we're seeing a rise up of the the conservative or the real Republican Party standing behind Donald Trump,
right,
which we've never seen. But on the other side of that, we're seeing a crumbling, really, of the Democratic Party that we've been watching for years. And will there be a resurgence? And again, I can't talk too good Democrat, but I can kind of play one on TV. But my point is that we would be disingenuous and dishonest, actually, to the cause if we were to say we're not going to promote a Democratic Party or a Libertarian Party. We're just as committed to do that, because we look what the one party system does. Look what we don't have any party system in California.
Yeah.
We have a monoparty system that's not working, and look what you get.
Yeah, and I mean,
this is not a Republican form of government.
It's what we've pulled away from on a national level. If it wasn't for Donald Trump, I wouldn't be calling myself a Republican, and I would have very little faith in the future of the country. So, listen, Paul, I'd really like to open up the phones for questions and comments. We've got a lot of people watching, 2,700 people watching, and many people who had specific questions for you guys. So I'm just going to do a rundown on how this is going to work. I'm going to put the Zoom link in the chat box. You guys must have Zoom downloaded on your phone or on your computer. There's an application or the website. If you have the application, then there should not be a password that you're asked for. It will automatically authenticate you. When you come on, please do be respectful. We're going to stay on topic tonight, asking questions exclusively about New California from Paul and Greg. If everybody gets 2 minutes to make your point or to ask your question, just so that we can have as many people participate as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and throw that in there. It's also going to go into the description of the video. And while I'm doing that, I need to run through and give a couple of quick thank yous to some people in the audience who've given some super chats. Dana Finkler, thank you for that. Where we bark one, we bark all. Margaret Bertram said, "Merry Christmas, Red Pill. I bought myself a Christmas present I donated to you." Thank you for that, Margaret. I appreciate it. I wish this was monthly, but I'm stone broke. Anything that you do, whether it's just liking or sharing the video or participating in the way that you did, it all matters. Kaspersky 6257, thank you for that. Johnny Jonecht, thank you for that. Linda Mosley, thank you for that. God's Guy and Gina's Girl, thank you for joining. Legendary 2017 said, "God bless our President Trump and God bless Red Pill News." Thank you for that. Mommy the Patriot, thank you. Gypsy Nurse Kathy said that she'll start the super chats. Thank you. Untitled 82 and Jolie Pope, thank you both for that. Keep up the hard work, she said. And finally, Love in Texas said, "Is Devin Nunes behind this?" And that's why I asked. Our first caller of the evening is Deborah. Deborah, you're here on the air with Paul and Greg. How are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Excellent. Thanks for calling. What's your question?
Doing well. Thank you.
So I didn't even know that New California was like really a thing. I think I heard about it like a couple years ago and then just kind of left my mind. So I'm really happy about that. And the only thing that I really want to know is, I guess for all of us, what's like one suggestion that would work for everybody else, all the other states, so that we can all kind of, just as citizens, get back to being a little bit more constitutional.
So people may be looking to adopt this model in other states if they're looking at the same kind of problem?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Okay. Well, where do they start?
I'm in Florida, so it's not too bad here. But right. I know a lot of people like New York and even like DC, like in crazy liberal areas. That might be something that would be good to know.
Well, you ask a very good question, and you're right on the mark. This is spreading around the nation, of course, what they've done. And, from the most recent real big spread that everybody needs to be concerned about nationally is the spreading of the California corrupt election system, which DeSantis almost got caught up in that when he was elected, but that was stopped. They were doing ballot harvesting, and luckily people were notified and they stopped it. And of course, that I know your election officer there was, she was forced to resign, and DeSantis won. But that's one of the first things I want to put the word out to everybody is be cautious, be careful, insist that the election be run fair, They're not following the California system. But this whole system that they've got in place right now by the socialists is really done in part because of Reynolds versus Sims, that 1964 decision, in which you lose representation in the rural areas. And a classic example of that is New York. New York, all upstate New York was rural, and you have Manhattan, basically, that runs everything. That's where you have a heavy population density. And of course, they can tell the upstate areas what to do all the time. And of course, that's what happens. You saw the map of California. The population centers is urban LA and San Francisco, Sacramento. But what you need to do, there is an active movement right now in Illinois. There is an active movement in New Nevada, as they call it, New Nevada. Oh, wow. And there's one that's developing in New York. And we're happy to help people. We've been consulting with them. They've been, especially the one in New Illinois, is really blossoming. We will become 51st state. My prediction is Illinois will become the 52nd state because they're following the same order. They're doing the same thing.
Good.
And so it's not a difficult thing to do. You can contact us at the newcaliforniastate.com and leave a message for us, and we'll get back to you if you're interested in starting something like that in your own state. I would encourage Florida to get ahead of the curve because there are places, you got Miami and all that stuff. I mean, everywhere where you have a population area, you can count on your senators being engaged in those population centers and not in the rural areas. So rural area representation just is not there.
Yeah, my congressman is Ross Spano, and he's currently in the midst of something really crazy.
Right.
So yeah,
well, they can do crazy things because they can.
Yeah.
There's exactly. Like California, they can.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much.
Deborah, thanks for your call.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
God bless you, Deborah.
All right. Coming up next, we have NorCal Patriot. NorCal, it doesn't look like you have a mic on. If you can get that microphone worked out, we'll come to you. But first, we're going to go to Craig. Craig, you're on the air with Greg and Paul. How are you, bud?
Hello. Good. Is the New California going to be a corporation?
In the sense of a classic corporation that you'd find in any business or anything like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Right. Well, we know that the United States federal government right now is a corporation. All the states are corporations, which deviated from what the original founders had in the Constitution.
Right. And I'll just throw this. What would you suggest us to do to become a new state if we can't be a corporation under those terms?
I'm not quite sure. They exist as an entity, but when the founders, I mean, the federal government was founded as a corporation. I think it was 1891, if I'm not
right.
And so prior to that, it was a sovereign entity. Well, I say that kind of cheek, and the reason I say that is because the federal government and an entity, according to the Paris Peace Treaty of 1783, was owned by England.
Right. And again, I understand what you're saying because I get this question all the time. This is the problem that we have is we have to deal with the cards that we have on the deck, and right now this is in the deck, and these are the cards we have, which is the Constitution that can drive this. We will comply with whatever the federal government wants us to do at this point in time. Now, there is a movement afoot that may be of aid to you. We would certainly support the other one, that what you're talking about. But the notion of us, being in denial about that, not complying with the wishes of the Congress to become a new state, is just not going to happen. We'll have to comply with those laws. I mean, that's the reality check. We can't stand and protest against it and say we're not going to do this because that's not going to work. They're not going to allow us to become a state. If we have enough people in the United States who want to change that and the will of the people to do that, there's a lot of dynamic things going on right now. Because of what Donald Trump, he's blowing the whole thing up. And New California is part of the blow up. Right. Let me tell you, this is a earth shaker to this whole country, and
Right.
he knows that. And so, you know, you never know what's going to happen. But again, how do we handle that? But we will never become a new state on our own and have autonomy. So I would rather take that and have ourselves as a new state and have all the things that we're going to garner from that and have our own autonomous state than be worried about the other part of that. I totally get what you're saying, but I have a feeling because of the globalist nature, and I do Agenda 21 radio. I know all about the globalists and all this stuff that goes on.
Sure.
But this is a way I think that would countermand that, a lot of it, by forming a new state and breaking off the binds of Reynolds versus Sims, which gives us lack of representation. I think is a good first step.
Sure. Yeah. I could understand that. Yeah. I personally think that when Trump says he's going to give the people back their government, I think he means that.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, he does. You know, listen, everybody says, well, I'm going to be the governor and all that stuff. I said, look, I'm not going to be the governor, guys. It's somebody else. It's going to be your government. You know, I'm going to walk away like Benjamin Franklin. It's a republic if you can keep it.
That's
mentality. Right. And the people have to be in charge. And again, it goes back to some of these things that they've been able to do because of that corporate status that you're talking about and the demands of the globalists. You know, they strip away your rights one right at a time. And of course, God has given us these rights. These are our rights to surrender if we choose. And we should never choose to surrender any of these rights to government. So we're going to reclaim a lot of these rights. And of course, reclaiming representation and enhancing and emboldening, bringing back a Republican form of government is exactly what is demanded of us constitutionally. It's our right and our duty to do that. That's what Article 4, Section 4 is all about. And we're doing that. This will be a good first step. And, you know, once that starts stepping out to the rest of the country, all these globalists, the whole thing's going to tumble down from them. This is their house of cards.
Right.
All right, Craig, we've got another caller. So thank you very much for calling in, my friend.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep. Have a good one. So, Paul, no spot for you in the burgeoning new California government?
Well, you know, I'm a little bit more anxious to work with the other states to help them too.
I like what you're doing. Okay.
We you know, we've got to get there's another challenge. You know, it's California first, and it's going to go, and then New Illinois. You know, look what's going on in Chicago.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go to Carl to go next. Carl to go, you're on the air with Paul and Greg and Red Pill 78. What's your question?
Hi, Paul. Hey, Red Pill. I was curious on how you guys were planning to segregate the two states. I mean, because you were talking about how 90% of the state is rural, and the biggest deep state parts are in San Francisco and LA and San Diego.
Right.
Sacramento.
In Sacramento.
Yeah.
Not San Diego.
We I hate to, I'm not avoiding your question, but I'm going to tell you that I'm avoiding your question before I answer the question. How's that? There's going to be negotiations going on, and I'm not at liberty to come up with that, but I'll give you a clue. There are two states already that don't have contiguous boundaries.
Right.
And those two states might give you a clue, but we do have a plan, and we feel it's a good plan. And we feel that they're going to be very much encouraged to take the plan.
Yeah,
I hate to be so vague. I know it demands a great answer or an answer that's logical, but I can't tell you that.
All right, because that was just, you know, if you just split it down the middle, or, you know, for instance, stakes, all you're doing is growing the deep state.
Right.
You know, those high populations control, they're in power. I mean, California is completely, you know, corrupt because of those 3 or 4 cities.
That's right.
Yep.
Well, listen,
Right.
Washington, D.C. is corrupt because of that. Look what you got. Who's in charge of the Congress? Nancy Pelosi, who's a Californian. You had Kamala Harris, who's a Californian. You have, what's her name? Karen Bass. You got Adam Schiff. Look at who you have over there that's controlling the nation now.
Oh,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? It's So that's again, that's the cast of characters we're going to have to deal with here down the road. But then there's Devin Nunes.
Devin does a great job.
Yeah.
Well, listen, Carl, thank you for your call, bud.
Hoorah.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Paul, we had a question from someone in the audience. James Rohrbeck had asked if you had looked at propertarianism as a model for the state of New California.
Is that involving property rights?
I would imagine so. I'm not familiar with it myself. James, if you want to call in and ask that question,
wiki it for us. And yeah. I think it's in regards to property rights and stuff.
Yeah.
I have never heard it in that term, but one of the things, and I'll tell you, I don't have it in front of me, but if you go and read our Declaration of Independence for New California, we specifically spell out property rights as a right that we have, right to property. And of course, the original declaration doesn't do that. It says happiness. And that's an allusion to, or that alludes to property rights. So yes, in terms of property rights, we're definitely a property rights state. And we're going to be pushing that with great authority in everything that we do. So this old notion of people, as an example, what's happening in California, they're taking away your property rights by water. You know, by if you're in the rural areas in particular, see, this is where the lack of representation really catches up with you. If you're in rural areas, you lose a lot of rights by these entities, such as the California Air Resources Board and the Cal EPA and Coastal Commission. And, you know, they're taking whole properties from people under false pretenses. This is, you know, that's a property problem, obviously. So that will not happen in New California. These agencies and bureaucracies of unelected officials will go away. And regionalism happens to be one of them. That's another problem, but we'll get rid of that.
How is the agricultural industry in New California going to benefit from this secession? I would imagine with the water no longer being siphoned off to primarily fill the coffers of the large metropolitan areas, that you would be able to grow a lot more crops.
Well, you know, there's ample water to go around. The problem is that there are people that are bigger buyers than others, and they're able to broker water in different areas. It's quite a scam going on with the water thing right now, and it's becoming more and more evident as time goes on. People are figuring it out. It's not that we have we have a corner on the knowledge about all this stuff. People have been writing books about how this corruption goes with water. And that will be broken up by what we're doing in New California. And there's going to be contracts that have to be fulfilled and obligations and things, that we understand that. But if you're talking about a situation where water is going to be dominated by one or two or three players, and right now you can look at Nancy Pelosi's husband and see what kind of a player he is in the water industry, and which is not a good player, by the way. But these guys are deliberately squirreling away water, obviously, to control it for themselves, and it hurts everybody else. That will not happen. Part of the reason we're going to take the market away, we're going to enhance the market by building out the water projects in California and having more water available, managing it better, and not in the middle of a drought draining reservoirs so that salmon can run through the rivers. Now, I'm a biologist. I understand the ichthyology business,
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that some of the rivers of California, which run now because the reservoirs are being allowed to be open all year long, back in the day, they never ran year round. They dried up in the fall or the winter, the spring and summer, they dried up. And so where's the salmon running on those dried up rivers? Well, of course, there was never any spawning going on. I mean, come on. I mean, eggs don't stay viable in the dry soil of a dried up river. Sorry, they don't.
So how will that affect the existing contracts that are in place? Are you just planning to just square it all away? Everything just gets washed and everyone has to start from square one?
There will be some instances of that. That's what I've been kind of told. But there's definitely going to be a process by contracts being fulfilled, some being canceled. I anticipate great litigation. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the courts will have to go with this primarily because I think they didn't, to their detriment, they didn't fill a lot of judgeships in California, and Donald Trump has been filling them rather readily.
Yes, he has.
So the court systems, I think, are going to be leaning in our favor. And I bet you can actually bank on that. That's going to happen. But there will be a time, probably a 5 to 10, even 20-year window on solving and resolving some of these contracts.
What about that issue with the pensions that we were talking about earlier? Will the existing pension system remain with the original state of California, and you guys will just start over from the beginning?
Yes, we'll start our own pension system in California. And then the thing is that PERS and STRS, those are the two largest pension systems in the nation, the state teachers retirement system and the public employee retirement system. They have an obligation as the state pension systems to pay pensioners, and they have to meet that obligation. They have a duty to do that. Their problem is right now they can't do that. And then, of course, when the state is formed, they're going to lose a lot of people that are going to be paying into that, such as your municipalities and stuff. And they're going to be pretty happy, those municipalities, to get out of that. So New California will, in fact, purchase and make sure that these pension systems in California are solvent. That'll all be part of the agreement worked out that will be going forward when we negotiate with them. We're not going to let them high and dry. And again, we won't do that because we feel not, but we will definitely put restrictions on how they invest. We will not, the key thing, I'll tell you right now,
please.
One of the key things is that we will not, and we'll break it here on your show. We will not assume any responsibility for any bonds that are passed in this March election coming up. And they're talking $27 billion. And I hate to tell you and be rude, not even rude, but if you want to add on from the California School Boards Association an additional $27 billion, as I've heard that there's planning for, that ain't happening. So California, just be put on notice. When we come to negotiate with you, you're stuck with that $57 billion. We don't care how crippled you are, you're stuck with it. We're just putting it out there right now and letting you know. Because to obligate $57 billion of bonds, and the taxpayer is ultimately going to have to pay this, to obligate future generations for 40, 50 years of that kind of bonding is ludicrous and intolerable. And so we're not going to do that for New California. You're stuck with it. And if you know, you have to figure out how you're going to get out of that. You're going to have to get out of that. But you'd be better off by not getting involved with that right now, taking the hit economically and negotiating with us quicker than what you thought, so that you can get the financial relief that you're going to need. Because we will have a booming economy in New California, and they will not. Yes. Obviously, they don't know how to run an economy.
Yeah.
And I don't pretend to be. I just know that Ronald Reagan had the right idea, and certainly Donald Trump has the right idea.
I think so.
And this country has always had the right idea about the economy, and we are the biggest, largest actor on the planet in terms of the of an economy, and will remain so and get bigger and better for everybody with New California.
All right, I've got some more questions about the insolvency of the original state of California, but Colleen Luce Wilson says, what about the dams that are ready to break to get Mr. Feinstein's algae fuel farm going? Do we know about that?
Yeah.
Diane's husband?
I know. When I know about the dams, first of all, the money that was allocated to dams and infrastructure has been siphoned off by the agencies and the bureaucracies of California. That money has all been redirected, and mostly to social justice programs, and mostly to illegal foreign nationals that have been coming across the border over the last 10 to 12 years. Now, I want to say something very clear and loud that everybody understand. That when I talk about illegal foreign nationals that are coming to the United States, it's not their fault. They're the ones that are being duped and induced and even sometimes forced to come across the border. They pay money, or they're paid for by other people. They're literally bought and sold as they come across the border. They're victimized. They are the victims. But once they're across the border, then what happens is we in the state of California pay our resources, our dollars, to pay them off, to sustain them. And normally that payout has been about 27 to 31 billion dollars year over year for the last several years. Now, you start adding up that billions of dollars for people coming across the border illegally, then what's that doing to the rest of the state? And of course, that's where we have these dilemmas. So all this stuff, the welfare, all the things that are going on, we're the single largest state in the nation for welfare. It's a huge business. See, in New California, that all stops. Wow. That all stops. So the billions of dollars that have been squandered away will go away.
So once that happens, what do you think is going to happen to what's left of the original state of California? I mean, how are they going to meet what obligations they have, and you know, all of these bonds that they've passed? I mean, what are they going to do?
Well, there's going to be a buyout, and we're going to be part of that buyout. We're going to be more than happy to help them out to do that. And we figure that the window will be anywhere from 7 to 12 years for New California to fulfill that obligation. But I'm just, you know, like I'm using your format to tell the people in California, we're not going to be obligated to an additional $57 billion, and they would be better suited to eat it and just work with us now in the next coming months, March or April or May or whatever. Yeah, but we're going to reach out to them. We've already reached out to them, and you know, remember, I want to say something because I'm watching some of the top chats that are coming up here, but this New California thing is the very best option for statehood of anybody out there because, one, it's constitutional. We meet the constitutional requirements. We fulfill them splendidly. And we're using history with the West Virginia thing. But the other ways in which people have been trying to make a state don't pass constitutional muster. The other part of it is that I want to go through these numbers because we almost touched upon this, but it's very important that California right now has 53 members of the House of the House of Representatives. And the way the system is now, there's only 7 that are Republicans. The rest are all Democrats. When we talked about when going into the 2018 election, California had 15 Republicans. In 2020, I think we had 22 or 23 Republicans. So this whole taking away of the Republican form of government has been absolutely superb by the Democrats and how they manipulated the California electoral system. My point is this: when California is separated with its 18.5 million people, we're going to get probably around anywhere from 24 to 25 members of the House of Representatives for New California, plus the 2 senators, plus we're going to get about 27 electoral votes. Because California has 55. Now, I want you guys to think about that.
That'll change the balance.
That will change the balance significantly. It's a game changer.
Oh,
and you see why we're wanting to get the help of Donald Trump, and we're trying to get the best people possible to make this happen, and make it happen. And it's going to happen. It's happening. It's happening right now, right before your eyes.
Greg, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I just wanted to agree. I said amen.
Okay.
Paul's the cog in the wheel that really makes everything go forward.
Wow,
That's
Paul,
he's the whole wheel. I'm just a cog.
It's very impressive. We do have another caller, Oz, on, but Oz, it looks like you don't have a microphone. You may have to go into your settings and choose your microphone there. But you know, Greg, you keep saying that you're just a small part here, but I mean, I want to make the point that this is it's very important. I mean, the part you play is so important because without people like you, there's no way that Paul would have been able to help, you know, 52 out of all of these counties in the state of California get to, you know, the point where they're willing to go and give it another shot. So, you know, I mean, you know, is there anything coming up that people can do directly to get involved with? Do you guys have any events? Are you holding events locally in your area?
Yeah, we try to do one event a month. I'm trying to do Patriot Potlucks. I talked about that a little earlier. We just did one at the Smith Flat House in Placerville just a week ago, actually. And we're doing an event at the Cal Expo in Sacramento at the Sportsman's Expo. We're going to have a table there, 2 booths, and talking to people throughout all the counties. So we're represented there. Basically, in general, I'm talking on the phone almost all day long. I have a full-time job. So after I get off work, people are texting me and calling me, and I'm putting out 50 to 100 texts sometimes every other day to let people know what's going on. So we're setting up citizen committees for security. We're setting up citizen community committees for the homeless, because the homeless is a huge, that's one of our resolutions that we put out. And then also I'm putting out for communications throughout the county, because, you know, if something hits the fan, we want to be able to talk.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been kind of negotiating with SOJ. There's a president, and all 6 board members were at our meeting last month, because they're just, you know, they're tired of asking for money, and we're not asking for money. We're just doing it basically by whatever we have. And we're doing a few things. If people get a hold of us, get a hold of your county people, you know, call them, tell them you want to get involved. We need the help. And like we said before, it's a we the people mode here. We're in the we the people mode, and without we the people, it's not the government. You know, we don't want more government, we want less government. You know, we want to get on the bandwagon, get out here and help us. And my wife and I are telling people that on our events, and people are jumping on more and more. Like I said, I've been doing this 6 months. My wife's been doing it 2 years, a year, and Paul's been doing it a few years, and it's spreading. And as Paul sees, you know, he does the town halls and he speaks, and people are listening, because most of our town halls, we're doubling the amount of people that are coming to them, and it's all word of mouth. We're not advertising on radios. I mean, we're talking to you, Red Pill, of course, but at the same time, you know, we're talking to our friends. We're texting everybody in our email lists. You know, it is a word of mouth.
It's a real grassroots movement.
Grassroots, really is, yeah.
All right.
That's
Oz,
a good way to put it.
Looks like Oz got his microphone working. Oz, you called in twice, buddy. Are you on your phone and your computer? Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, Red Pill.
How are you?
Very well, very well.
Excellent. What's your question?
Well, actually, this is the first time I've been able to come on with one of your things, and I was just... so this is the first off. I have only just joined, so I have know what the rest of the discussion is. I put one question though to you. If the US debt was created by a private organisation and fraudulently claimed the ownership of that from the American people, then a possible way of restoring that situation would be to gradually put money into the circulation by putting it into the hands of the community equally, like a national dividend or a national profit dividend, and let them pay off their debts and eventually all of the total debts. And you wouldn't change the volume of money, because you can't pay debts with borrowed money,
right?
Or you can't reduce the total debt with borrowed money. So I just wanted to share that with you.
No, you're absolutely correct. That's something that never made sense to me. The fact that the United States pays the Federal Reserve to print money. So every dollar, we're spending $1.10 or $1.20, whatever it is, to have that printed, and we're just increasing the deficit on a regular basis. Paul, do you have any plans, any unique plans for the state of New California in terms of the monetary system?
Well, you know, we can't have a monetary system. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
But we are going to be stockpiling gold and silver and metals, which is very unique. There's only a couple of states that do that, Texas being one of them. And Texas, for those of you that don't know, Texas is the sister state to California. Texas and California both declared their independence in 1836. That was the first time that California had ever done that. And then in California, and of course, their big symbol for both of them was a star. Texas became a republic as a nation, stood alone, declared itself a nation. California, by 1846, following the Williamita Bear Flag Rebellion, also became a republic for 22 years. And they were both mirroring the government of each other. It's the same time frame. Both were rejecting the centralized government of Mexico at the time, which had just also declared its independence in 1823, I think, 22 or 23. and they were of course part of Mexico at the time. But everybody was realizing that you gave up the king and queen, and all of a sudden you still have a centralized government in Mexico City. So that's what prompted the two states to form. That's why they're two sister states. But Texas has been still stockpiling gold and has gold reserves, and we will do the same thing. We have huge mining reserves in California. I mean, we have huge gold reserves already. We should have some of that out of the ground and as a reserve for ourselves. That will be a start, I think, for a lot of states that want to do the same thing. I think we could probably break up the money monopoly. It's going to take a long time to do it.
Absolutely.
I know exactly what he's talking about, and we can't change it overnight. And like I say, what would you suggest us to do? Our attempt is to make the statehood that we need to make, and that way we can work within the system to change it. It's really got to be changed, and I think Donald Trump understands that. I really believe the president understands that.
I agree. Oz, thank you for your call, friend.
Okay, YouTube, bless you, and bear in mind, even in Australia, many years ago, back at the early time, they ran short of money, and the governor called in all of the playing cards, the 52 card decks, and signed them and declared that was the money, and that enabled them to trade normally. Because you don't, if you revert back to gold and silver, essentially all you're doing is barter. And the gold or the silver or whatever you're using has to be worth everything else that can ever be produced by that society. And it's the banking system actually developed from the gold exchanges that were holding the gold for people and issuing certificates. But the people didn't know how many certificates these crooks issued. And so all of that money that came into circulation did so by way of an interest-bearing debt, which meant that the debt exceeded what was issued. That very system is what Christ or Yeshua, what he said was that you can't serve God and mammon, and that system is mammon.
Well, you know, the thing that's really interesting is you mentioned the playing cards, but barter systems of it, you know, that's what the system of last resort that's always been there. And even in the former communist Soviet Union, especially in East Germany and all throughout Europe, that the barter system actually was working. That was the form of black market that was going on that sustained a lot of people during that time of great tyranny.
Yeah, especially if the government itself is fighting against it.
Yeah.
All right, Oz, thanks again for your call, bud. We've got to go. We have reached the top of the hour, and we're out of time. All right. I just want to say thank you very much to Paul and Greg for being here tonight. Best of luck to you guys. I want to make sure that we stay in contact because I'm extremely interested in what's going on here. And, you know, I would be loving having you guys back on in the very near future as soon as you get any more developments, especially after the first of the year, because, once you can start talking about other things happening there, I'd be very, very keen on that. And one more super chat. Chris Hawkins says, can you believe all the patriotism? I love this. I absolutely love this. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for that, Chris. And I do want to remind everyone, tomorrow night at 8 p.m. is the first night of the Red Pill 78 and Methods Christmas Spectacular. We're going to be having True Reporting, Neon Revolt, Quite Frankly, and Educating Liberals starting tomorrow night at 8 p.m. And then on Monday at 9 p.m., it's going to be Methods and I hosting yet again with Space Shot, White Hat, and Brendan Dilley. So please do make sure you stop by. Going to be lots of Christmas cheer. We're going to be taking calls, and we're going to be talking about whatever we want to talk about because it's just going to be hanging out with good friends. So thank you again, gentlemen. I do appreciate you coming here. You want to tell people how to find your radio program?
Well, I do Agenda 21 radio on Red State Talk Radio. That's redstatetalkradio.com. We're the largest producer of conservative talk radio in the nation digitally. We emanate out of Washington, D.C. We have studios in Northern California, and I broadcast live from 6 to 9 a.m. Monday through Friday. And somebody who lives in a White House often listens to my show.
I was hoping that he was going to listen tonight. We'll see.
Dude, I'm sure
3 hours a day. That's a 3-hour-a-day show. So he's
yeah.
Well, he's very intelligent, so I don't doubt that he's listening to your program. All right, Greg, do you want to tell people where they can find you if they want to connect locally?
Well, you can go to newcaliforniastate.com and click on El Dorado County. That's where I'm at.
Beautiful.
So you can get a hold of me and we can hook you up. God bless you.
Go to Sign Up Genius when you go to New California State. Sign up there.
Yeah,
the sign up program.
Sign Up Genius. Click on El Dorado County, and my name probably pops up with my phone number and everything. So love to hear from you.
All right. Yeah, I want to hear.
Need them.
I want all of my viewers in California to go and sign up if you have not already signed up. This is an extremely important movement. I think that's going to set a major precedent here in the modern day. And, you know, there's nothing more that I want for the people of California than for their state to succeed. And I think that that's going to take the secession of them to do that. All right, guys. God bless everyone. As always, this has been Red Pill 78. I am the corruption detector, and this was your Red Pill News for Saturday Night Livestream. Good luck, everyone, and God bless.